Welcome to Screenwriters Rewatch from the Script Department, a show where we've gone rogue. Yes, you've heard us correctly. This week, we'll be talking about the classic 80s nostalgia, Flight of the Navigator. But join us on our podcast for our full-length discussion where we'll see whether or not we can sneak this into the Script Department vaults hidden in the Trimaxion Drone Ship. But for now, Lorna's going to give her review of Flight of the Navigator. Welcome, Lorna. Tell me, what
Hello.
nostalgia does this film evoke for you?
Oh, I absolutely loved this film. As a child, I've watched it many, many times on TV and I've shown it to my own kids, and it's just always been one of my favorites. And so watching it as a screenwriter was really, really hard. And um and there's still part of me that's still a little bit la 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 about the fact that so maybe it doesn't quite do everything it should do that a script should do to properly engage an audience. But when I watch it with my kids, they still enjoyed it. They maybe don't love it as much as I do. And I think that there are reasons for that. I think when we were kids, that there weren't actually many films for kids with actual kids as the protagonist. So this was one of the few where you actually had a child experiencing everything, and we were watching it through David's eyes, and that was a really major kind of pull and draw for this story. And we get to kind of experience the excitement through much more through his eyes than we would through an adult going through everything that he goes through. And so if you haven't seen it before, which you may not have done, it is basically this concept that David and his brother, they have a bit of a normal relationship really between two brothers. They're not getting on, and so David is sent out to go and get Jeff, and then Jeff scares him in the woods. He goes running back home, but David never comes back because he falls into a ditch, wakes up, and then finds himself 8 years in the future, but he hasn't grown up and everyone else has moved on. So suddenly this annoying little brother Jeff is probably about 18, maybe certainly an older teen, fully adult shaped, and his parents are, they do such an incredible job. It is heartbreaking as an adult now, as a parent, watching it and seeing how much they've been changed by the loss of David, and how when they see him, when he's come back to them, they're just absolutely just exactly as you would be, thrilled, freaked out because obviously he's still a kid, but amazed, and they thought they'd lost him. They thought he was dead, but then obviously NASA come along and start prodding and poking him to try and figure out where he's been, why he hasn't aged, and they find the spaceship as well, which manages to crash into power lines. Fortunately, because if it hadn't have got stuck on Earth, then there wouldn't have been any story. He just would have got prodded and poked by NASA forevermore, which would be a bit sad, and definitely not much of a storyline in there. So there's more of a storyline than if that had happened. But it's slightly convenient that the spaceship gets grounded on Earth because it runs into the power lines. So there's quite a few moments like that as a screenwriter where you watch it and go, yeah, that's a little convenient that happened. But as a kid, you're just like, wow, how exciting is this? And the spaceship, I mean, the special effects in it, they really hold up still. Today, there's not a single time where I'm just like, this looks a bit kind of, you can see that the green screen is there. And there's plenty of films like Alien and things that where you watch the originals and you're like, yeah, yes, you can see it's a little bit
I think my 13-year-old
unrealistic.
enjoyed the door opening and closing.
Yeah,
Thought that was great.
that's really
Wow.
cool, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, and I did look this up actually because the graphics predated the Terminator films, where the
Yeah,
graphics in there
yeah,
are
yeah,
notoriously good. When you've got
yeah,
the robot that's sort of
yeah,
liquefying.
yeah.
So yeah, it's the graphics are a big part of this, even though there's only a small part of the graphics in it. But
Yeah,
Yeah.
they do a great job of kind of combining it with sets that they've put a lot of work into, and then just not many scenes really of the spaceship, but they really make the most of it, and it is really impressive when the kids turn up. When he turns up at Big Al's gas station and he goes to get change to be able to call home, and there's a family that comes along and goes, wow, this is cool, let's stand on the steps, and there's just like me going, that would be me.
Yeah.
I would, even if I don't get to be David, I'd quite happily be the kid that's just like, oh, let's just go and investigate when we pull over for gas at the gas station.
And I watched that when I watched it this time, I still looked for the seams. And so they must have those steps, those hovering steps must have been done with sort of smoke and mirrors and not CGI.
Mm,
I
yeah.
mean, I'm assuming only because I couldn't see, the join
No.
or how they'd done that.
No. No.
Which
Yeah.
it's a skill that's sort of it's not lost, but I wonder if we reach too easily for CGI these days,
Yeah. Yeah,
because
that's
it's
true.
probably now cheaper and easier than putting
Yeah.
together
Yeah.
a complex set that has those
Yeah.
amazing effects.
Yeah, and it's a shame to lose those skills, isn't it? And get
Mm.
passed on when people stop using them. Yeah, so once David is taken away by NASA, they do all sorts of investigations and find that he can communicate with the ship, and then he's got all these star charts in his head, and he can tell them that he'd been to Phalon, is it? He'd been um, prodded and poked on Phalon, so that he's getting a lot of prodding and poking wherever he goes. He's now very
He doesn't
intriguing
ask
for everyone.
what they did to him, does he? He's not interested in, those 4 hours that he was gone, or the equivalent of
Yeah,
4 hours.
yeah,
What happened to him? What happened to his body? What happened to his mind? He just
yeah,
accepts it, which
yeah.
didn't kind of fit on that story arc, that inquisitive character for
Yeah,
me.
yeah. Well, he was distracted by the really cool ship he got to fly. and and who doesn't love that cute little alien that he gets to keep? I mean,
Oh,
I mean, that again, that's definite wish fulfillment there, isn't it? It's like
yeah.
you get to go away, fly around in a spaceship with an alien, and then come back with a cute little alien as
Yeah, and it's very on par with Groot when he's very small and
Yeah, yeah, that's true. Yeah, yeah, Baby Groot.
yeah, and then also in the Harry Potter, the newer little stick creature, the bow truckle, um,
Yeah, yeah.
from Fantastic Beasts. That
Yes.
it's kind of along those lines, isn't it? Like a little mini
Yeah.
mascot that just sort of keeps the protagonist, you know,
Yeah.
sort of almost like a save the cat device in a way, isn't it? But
Yeah, it
not.
is really, isn't it? And that gives it extra heart at the end that this little orphan alien that's lost his whole planet and doesn't understand that he's lost his whole planet and can never go home, gets to go home with David and fine. I mean, David has never been told what this little thing eats, so you might poison
It's
him
true.
within 5 minutes. But for those 5 minutes, they have this really cute time together.
It might also grow into a massitive monster and
Yeah,
it might
that's
just be
true.
a
Might be a
baby.
baby and then end up being.
Yeah.
Unable to self reproduce, and so then they take over the
Oh,
planet
yeah,
and
that's it.
humans
The
die out.
ecosystem is ruined, yeah.
But we won't talk about that. It's cute. So eventually, he decides that well, he tried to get back to his family, and the whole house is surrounded by police. Sirens are going. There's helicopters in the air. The parents are like really pleased to see him because he's managed to escape from NASA, who were planning on keeping him longer than they said they were going to, because there's just so much to investigate. And forgetting that he's an actual human child. And so they're desperate for him to come home. Jeff has helped him by putting fireworks on the roof, and then so David comes out, realizes this isn't going to work, and says, "I'm sorry, I love you, but I don't belong here anymore," and goes back in the spaceship. Now, he's been told that if he goes back in time, then there's a risk he might die. In fact, it might have been even
Vaporized, I think was the
disintegrate.
word Max
Vaporize,
used.
that's it.
Vaporized,
Vaporize,
not just
which
died, vaporized.
no, yeah, could be quite painful, of all the ways to go. And he hadn't really, so he'd just been told that it was therefore not possible, but then this time he says, actually, let's do it, let's try. So it could have been that he did vaporize and disappear, and then as far as his parents were aware, he turned up for a bit, they got to see him, and maybe they could imagine that he'd gone off in the spaceship and been safe and had a good life somewhere else. But even with him going back, there's a bit of a paradox here, because if
Mhm.
taking him back in time, there's still to be able to go back in time, they still have this journey has still happened in the future. So when he grows up, he will meet himself going through that cycle, unless they manage to break it somehow, and then they have to make sure that they have a loop where they tell the old versions of themselves that that it's okay to travel back in time, and that they need to then, once they've done that, to tell the past selves to do that little loop, so that otherwise then again you end up in a paradox. So it's a bit messy, but we don't think about
No,
that.
maybe Christopher Nolan will, revisit that one for us.
So yes, time travel and going up and down your own timeline, it's a nightmare. I've written a story
Yeah.
like that and realized what a nightmare it was, and I was like, oh no, this is why Doctor Who has the rule that you don't cross your own timeline, because it's messy, man.
I totally
I
will.
know, understand. It's not because it causes issues with the space and time, it's because the writers can't do it and don't want to. Thank you very much.
Yeah, that might be why it's a very linear process in this instance. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh dear. Yes. So, and then he gets delivered back home. He's nice to his brother, tells his mum, not his dad, his mum and his brother, that he loves them, and shows his little brother his cool new little alien pet. His little brother is actually impressed and a bit freaked out that his brother's told him that he loves him.
Yes. Yeah, there's a definite, "Well, who is this person?" A few
Yeah.
hours ago we were fighting and you hated my guts,
Yeah.
and here we are, it's different. And I guess the great thing is that you hope that continues, but I think most
Mm.
parents, especially of that age, whether you've got two siblings of the same gender, close in age, that by the time it gets to bedtime, they'll be
Yeah,
fighting
it'll all
again.
fall apart again. And if they
Yeah,
don't resolve it as parents, then it's just going to be a
yeah,
nightmare. Please, please.
that's it. And to bring
Discipline
back in
both your
your
children.
that's it. To bring back in your time, sort of paradox theory, I
Yeah.
sort of wondered, is David making, like, is he changing his perspective about his brother because he's met him in the
Mm.
future and he's a nice
Mm.
guy and he looks
Yeah.
after him and he
Yeah.
looks out for him?
Yeah.
But of course, his brother Jeff would only have become that person because of
Mm.
losing his brother, reflecting
Yeah.
on how he
Yes.
contributed to that loss
Yes,
and the
yes,
impact of the
and the
wider
guilt that he
family.
had for jumping out the tree. Absolutely, that
That's
made him change. So
Yes.
it's quite possible that he might carry on being a jerk, because he's not going to get any
Exactly,
discipline
he
from his
might,
parents, is he?
yeah. So then David's sort of, love for appreciation for him is sort of
Yeah,
forlorn because this
yeah,
character's never
yeah,
gonna change because
yeah,
those things never happened. Um,
yeah.
but again, maybe that's for the sequel.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. But,
That's
also, maybe with David's changed perspective, he might be able to kind of handle his and discipline himself, his younger brother, just to kind of go, sort it out. And not feel quite so threatened and annoyed by his younger brother's behavior, and just like, because it doesn't get to him as much, his younger brother learns it doesn't work, and so therefore they kind of settle down. And because his older brother is able to be nice to him,
Yeah,
and just kind of it that changes the relationship. So it could be that it'll all work itself out in its own way, but the parents are not going to change, are they?
no, I think you get to a certain age and you stop having the ability to really change your personality significantly, don't you?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
this film is a real coming of age sort of
yeah.
story,
It is.
and David matures through that journey. That whether that's part of the journey on the ship with Max, or the events that lead up to that, with being exposed to a more serious adult
Yeah.
environment.
Yeah.
How did you
Yeah.
feel that his arc progressed throughout that story?
There isn't a massive arc, so there's a vague sense that he needs to be a little bit braver because he's a bit worried in the woods and his little brother is able to scare him. And also his dog's a bit of a wuss as well, isn't he? He's not he gets scared in the woods, even though it's called Bruiser. He's not he's like he's a bit of a scaredy dog. Um and but there's also the relationship between him and his brother. So obviously he gets braver through the film and he's able to deal with these adults. He's also not able to talk to the girl that he likes. So when he's in NASA, he also talks to the attractive um she's an intern, isn't she?
Yeah,
And
Sarah Jessica Parker in her
yes, I
last
always want to
known
say
days.
Sarah Michelle Gellar, so I was avoiding saying her name because I knew I was going to say the wrong one. They're
Yeah.
both Sarahs, they're both blonde from a similar era. They have three names. Yeah. Yes, Sarah Jessica Parker.
Yeah.
And so she's cool and hip, and and because she's like accepts him and just is able to talk to him normally, he's able to talk to her normally, and he gains a bit of confidence talking to girls. But there's no real sense of there being any growth through that relationship. She just chats to him and he chats back, and there's no issue. So it's just like he has an experience that shows that, oh look, you can talk to girls, and that's it really. And she obviously helps him out, and with getting braver. So yeah, to start off with, he's choosing not to go through the vaporization process, and then at the end he decides he'll risk it because, but the thing is, it's choosing one fear over the other, because it's like, well, I don't want to be a guinea pig for this lot, so I'm going to try and go back. So it's really not so much being braver, it's just like, let's risk the vaporization just to get rid of these lot after me. So yeah, it's all a little bit. Yeah, he makes different choices towards the end, and he's kind of chilled out a bit, become a bit cooler, because he's realized, he's not so worried about things anymore, because he's not getting chased around by NASA. um and so he realized he's got a different perspective on his own life compared to
Hmm.
before, but it's not a real growth, is it? It's just
Well,
different perspective.
we'll unpack this a little bit
Yeah.
more over on our podcast discussion. So if you want to head over to wherever you get your podcasts, you can search for the script department. Just use the links found in the video below, and we'll be back for another review.
Thanks so much for watching our video, everybody. We really hope you enjoyed it. You can like us and subscribe to us over here on YouTube. And if you want to hear more of this conversation, head over to Spotify, Apple, places like that for a much longer version. But for now, YouTube thinks you'll like these ones. They look pretty good. I reckon you should check it out, especially that top one. Ooh, nice.